Welcome to the Night Show. This is episode 12. This is also our first international guest. And I have to say I'm extremely blessed and honored to have had the opportunity to speak with her. Join us, won't you? The Night Show. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I know it's been a long day for you, probably a long week, so I won't take up too much of your time. I was wondering if you can start just by introducing yourself, talking about what you do, where you're from.
Okay. My name is Zethu Cakata. I'm a professor at the Department of Psychology, University of South Africa. That means I live in South Africa.
Yes. They couldn't tell by the accent.
Yeah.
You are a native woman of South Africa.
Yeah.
So you came out here to do the Black Psychologists Conference. So it's a international.
It's international.
Yeah, it's international, and it's your first year, first time in the U.S.
It was my first time.
Yeah, on the 4th of July of all days to be here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if folks hear random bangs and pops, it's we're safe. It's just we're in the middle of L.A. and there's fireworks going on.
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your work, what your focus is and how you got interested in doing it.
All right. So my work is in psychology, but the psychology that we've got in South Africa is the same as the psychology that's taught in universities here, because it's taken directly what you guys have.
Okay.
That's what we get taught. But then we discovered that there is this thing called Black Association for Black Psychologists. It's where it was a group of African Americans who got together and said, listen, this is not working for black people because our condition is different.
Yeah.
Like black people world over, they have the same condition, which is, it came out of colonialism. So the psychology that we're getting from Euro-America wasn't speaking to the needs of the black community. So they formed this association where the aim was to address the needs of the black, especially the African.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what was the disconnect that you were seeing from what you were getting from American standard psychology, and what were some of the issues that were just kind of getting missed for people on the day-to-day that they have to go through in South Africa?
Yeah, it sort of dismisses us. You find that we use textbooks that are produced from America, and then when you open it, it's so amazing that it says nothing about Africa. And when we get mentioned, or when something that is not Western is mentioned, it's always a tiny bit at the end of the chapter, and it's called names, like you would be referred to as a tribe in Africa. And what I discovered is that even the language they use, nobody else in the world is called a tribe except for indigenous people.
Right.
It's usually black people in Africa, it's usually indigenous American, aboriginals, and everyone else is a human being, but we tribes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about this before, but the how can I say this? The words we use, the sounds we use, and what the meaning attached to them. Like when you think tribe, when you say tribe, at least the visual stimulus that we've been fed and conditioned to, you see it. You think of a tribe, you hear the word tribe, and you think of somebody who's probably not as industrialized or advanced socially, economically, whatever. When I was living in Guam, I was talking about this earlier. I was living in Guam. I would have people come up to me that when I said that to them, like, "Oh, do they wear little grass skirts and coconuts?" I'm like, no, man. They drive 4 trucks and just normal folks doing just normal stuff. They have great barbecue and they do wild stuff, but it's still people.
Exactly.
And the words do change how people think and respond and evaluate or value or devalue other people.
Yes.
So, with that experience, what was your response? How do you think or yes, as a community in South Africa, having those textbooks, like.
Yeah. I think now we, more than ever before, we sort of feel pressured to have pressure from ourselves, from our spirit, to actually teach our children the psychology that will make them proud of themselves.
Right.
Like in my language, we don't use the word tribe. We use different words when we describe ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when we translate those words in English, it's become a nation. Like I am a Xhosa speaking, and the colonials will call me from a Xhosa tribe.
Mm-hmm.
But in my language, I am a nation of amaXhosa. I'm a Xhosa people. I'm from a people of amaXhosa. And we never refer to ourselves as a tribe, but a nation or a people.
Yeah.
So it's the same with various language groupings within Africa. When you look into what do they call themselves, you find that it doesn't translate into a tribe, but to a nation or a people. So I'm trying to use language, like very basic words that we use to refer to ourselves, and to show that here is the psychology with just in our languages, just the way we refer to ourselves. It speaks of us as abantu, a people. So I'm trying to say, okay, it's not going to work if we use the very same language of the colonizer to teach our children, because it distorts the entire meaning. It distorts the entire message, because our knowledges are in the languages that we speak. So it's better to use those languages to communicate, because we'll be communicate more than just what we know, but we'll be communicate how we know ourselves as a people. So it's our know, what in psychology they call epistemology, the ways of knowing, how you know yourself, how you introduce yourself to the world. So it will be, you'll be speaking in your own terms. I'm communicating the knowledge of my people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I can see that there's a lot of personal sovereignty, saying that you come from a nation of people versus like I'm from this tribe.
Yeah.
It's very limiting, and it diminishes the actual strength and power that is with an entire group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It really does. It diminishes everything, your history as you know it, because now you find that our children get to be taught a psychology of as if it just begins with colonialism. Everything we taught, the starting point is the colonial era. So they never get to know how they were as a people pre-colonially, because they no longer have the words that link them to the pre-colonial. So we're trying to recover that, the very basic, the vocabulary we use, because that's how we communicate to them, the people who they were, the people who got killed. So I believe our story, our knowledge is not just about, it doesn't begin with colonialism. We've always existed long before colonialism. So it's about time to recover that. Who were we before? How did we refer to ourselves?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that a lot of people of African descent live in this state of almost psychological homelessness. And having a way to communicate with yourself, like with your history, your past, that doesn't have to deal with a struggle. It's something that we have all, I guess, tried to rationalize on how to do it. Because just like in the States, the first thing you're really taught about blackness or African people is through slavery. And then even the conditions of how all of this started seem to be like there's a lot of holes in the narrative. There's a lot of holes in the story, and none of it all connects and makes sense.
Yeah. Which is the problem. I mean, we are one people that got separated through slavery, so all our stories always begins with the white man. And also what they've done very well is to make us use their tongue to communicate our pain, which is so limiting. And whenever we try to do this kind of work, they will say things like, but then you can't go back. Times have moved on. You can't go back to who you were. As if, I mean, that always baffles me, because it's not, it can't be on their terms. They can't, they have no, it has nothing to do with them.
Right. Right.
Yeah, we don't really need to go back to where we were. We know, if we know exactly what our languages are saying about who we were,
Right.
and then we can become that in this society, because it's as if we naturally evolved. When they say you can't go back, it's as if it was a natural evolution. Yes,
Right.
yet we were forced into the kind of lives that we started to live. We were forced. It didn't just come naturally. People, like, as Africans, we would have evolved on our own terms. They didn't give us that. They forced us into a particular lifestyle. So what we're saying now, we're going to reclaim who we think we were. And our languages hide a lot of that. They hide a lot of knowledge about ourselves. So we could use that, what we still have hidden in our languages, to, in this time, in this era, to chant our way. And we won't listen to people say, no, you can't go back. I mean, it's not your business what we decide to do with our lives, how we decide to rewrite our history. And that whatever evolution happens, it will be on our terms, because we agree that no culture stays stagnant. Cultures always evolve, but the evolution has to happen on the terms of the people who are living a culture. I mean, you don't enforce your language into a people and tell them it's cultural evolution. You don't do that. People choose. You pick and choose. You don't take things from other cultures that destroy your own culture. You choose what you can live, what can live with your culture from other people. As Africans, we've always learned from amongst ourselves as different people. We always done things differently as groupings of people. We've always learned from one another. But that learning happened on your own terms. It's not somebody coming and say, okay, now times have moved on. Now you move into capitalism, and this is who you're going to be. You're going to be individualistic. You're going to focus just on yourself and all of those things. No, people decide on their own terms. What is it that I can take from Europe? What is it that I can take from India? And just like the Caucasians have always done, I mean, they don't get to learn anything from other cultures. They don't. But they want people to learn from them. They're forcing this learning onto other people, but they don't take, I mean, we have Caucasians in South Africa. They know nothing about being African, living an African lifestyle. But whenever we try to say, we're going to do psychology. When we say we're going to do a psychology in our own terms, as we understand it as Africans, they're going to say, but the world has evolved. You've got to move with the times. But their lifestyle is not showing anything that involves evolution. They live like Europeans in Africa.
Right.
They don't incorporate our lifestyles, yet we have to incorporate everything from everywhere else in the world. So I believe it's time for Africans to just claim their ground and decide who they want to be on their own terms. And for me, language is an easy gateway to that, because it hides a lot of information about who we are.
Truly. It's interesting to hear you speak the same way, like we're like having the same issues, like very much so in America. And now with the advent of the internet and social media, like people across the world, across, even in the same city who never would have interacted with each other, are now speaking and talking about these issues. And it's just like, oh, there's so many people involved. So many people they're on the pulse. They understand it. Like, we need to rediscover who we were prior to all this prior to all these interruptions. And if we can dig into that, tap into that, there's a lot of power in there, and there's a lot of self-love and like the identity of who you are, who we are. It will give us a pride that'll allow us to get out of this condition where we're always victimized. But it's very interesting, the one point that you made about Europeans being in South Africa and dictating to you what path you should be going on. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling to be in a position where like you've stolen all these stories, these lives, these histories, and now you're gonna now tell these people that you can't go back to who you used to be, and it's almost as if you're still being owned by these people to be able to have the boldness to say that to somebody who you've victimized for hundreds of years, if almost not thousands of years.
Yeah, that's the strangest thing. There's this power of colonialism as a system that like right now we say Africa is independent, Africa is colonial, is free of colonialism. Yet the systems are still there. The systems still govern, even in places where you don't physically see a settler. But the settler mentality is still there. The settlers' way of doing things is still there. The settlers, and to me, that begins with the colonial education system that they left intact, because that was never destroyed. That was never questioned. Because injustice, yes, the physical injustice, which we often talk about, was really painful, but what is more painful to me is what they call epistemological injustice, the injustice you do to the knowledge of the people, because you lose your identity when you are erased basically from the world once you lose your knowledge. So they did that, and the schooling system is still intact, and the schooling system still teaches the very same things that the colonial education taught before we had independence. So to me, if we can dismantle that, if we can just force our way into the schooling system and begin to demand. I mean, I'm happy that today students in South Africa, both young and old, university level and school level, the kids are starting to demand their own knowledges, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah.
That now you have no choice. You can't stand in front of a class and teach them how to be European, because that's what we got taught in school. You go to school and you get taught how not to be yourself, which is the gist of the colonial education. It teaches you how to respect a queen, how to speak like a white person, in order for you to relate to the white world after you finished education. But we have a generation of students now who says, no, I want to learn how to relate to myself. Just before I came here, one of my students was telling me that I got taught by white people all my life, and I just realized today that they were teaching me how to relate to them.
Yeah.
And I've never been taught how to relate to myself as a black person, which was painful to me, because I'm part of the teaching force.
Right. So it's,
Yeah, and what am I teaching the children? So it gets us to question what we're doing, which I like so much. Yeah, so each time you're going to have to stand in front of the class, you must think twice. What am I teaching them about who they are? What am I saying to them about their blackness? Because majority of kids, and they pay for this education, are black. Yet we feed them all of these types of education from all over the world. Even when you say, okay, let's not focus much on Euro-American stuff, you find people saying, okay, what about the global north? What about Africa?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's always a scapegoat. Nobody wants to say, nobody respects Africa for the knowledge it produces, or it has always produced. So I think, yes, we can learn from the global north. The experience is the same, but what about from ourselves as Africans? And I think what I found out from the conference is the experience here too, where the black is always negated, the African is always at the bottom of the barrel. So it's time for us to rise up, because no one will do it for ourselves. Yeah.
I mean, there's this whole thought process that someone else is going to do it.
Yeah.
Like there's this savior complex that folks have, and then that's part of the indoctrination of colonized people. Is that we've been sold this autonomy, like our agency is is void, it's gone. And now everything that's going to save us is outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on someone to come down and say, it's okay now. You can be free, your own person, and now you can love yourself for who you actually are. And you don't have to keep being this person for this system that you've been conditioned into.
Yeah, it's within us. Like you said, I think you said something about self-love. Yeah, which is a concept that Steve Biko from South Africa, the one of the founders of Black Consciousness, it was the message of the Black Consciousness movement that the importance is internal, looking inwardly, like self-love and self-love as a group, as a group of Africans, digging in from ourselves and rising up for ourselves. I think it's about time we do that.
Yeah, truly. I think we need to give ourselves permission to love ourselves and to know ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think with everything that's going on now, the bank of information we have and the understanding that a lot of what the society that we live in is in a way, is mind control. It definitely is in a way. It's an agreed upon set of rules that we enforce socially through like our behaviors and what we say is okay and what's not okay. But it's gonna be a beautiful time. I feel it. I see it around like everywhere I go. I see it's folks who would be doing the most self-destructive things. It actually being a reflection of the trauma, the mental trauma that they're going through. Like psychologically, they feel like this is not what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to manifest in people creating more and connecting and starting to really just withdraw from everything that they see around them. It's like, I need to really know who I am because what I've been doing is not been working.
That's good. It's good you're feeling it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My friends, my groups of people that I've been hanging out with, like it's starting off very slow. It's like sometimes I feel like the things I learned in school, it just feel like it's not there. Like it's not feeding me. I was like, go on.
Yes.
Little background. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, read this article real quick. You should watch this documentary. Like, oh, you'll learn some more stuff.
Yeah.
But, people are a lot hungrier to really know who they are.
Yeah.
That's starting to become more, I don't want to say socially acceptable, but like it's being more socially prevalent. That's a necessity to like truly be happy and truly love yourself.
Yeah. No, eventually we'll get there.
Yeah.
It begins with consciousness. Because knowing what you take in is not good for you. It starts there.
Looking at anything that you subject yourself to, willingly or unwillingly, even if it's just like you driving in a car and having the radio on, like even if you're not paying attention, it's a diet. It's part of your diet. Is your diet sitcom TV, and it's just showing like the mom and the dad and the 3 kids and the dog and the wacky stuff that they got going on.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's lighthearted, but I mean, if that's all you ingest, if that's all you eat, then I mean that's what you'll become.
That's what you become. Yeah. And those are the lives. Those are the images you get from psychology textbook, and they're communicating a particular lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I'm saying it's about time we communicate our own families into the education.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap this up. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I want to thank Lou for putting this together. I really appreciate it. But I'll put up any of your talks, anything. Like I'll send you. I'll put all this stuff in the links for the show. And thank you again for sitting down. Really
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching and listening. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Doing so allows for more content and for better branding. Thanks again. Night Show.